Right. Let's talk trade. Lots going on in the news on trade, that's for sure. So the trade deficit now is about 3% of GDP.
There's a meeting happening.
They're solving the world's problems.
That's good.
Yeah, they are.
It's very important.
I may do that.
You know what? I'm just gonna put you,
That would just stop being.
All right, here we go. We're gonna try again. So trade deficit, imports over exports in the US hit a near record dollar level here. 622 billion, not quite as much as it's been in the past there, 2006, 2007, but somewhere around 3% of GDP. Back then it was about 6% of GDP, so it's a lot more. So while it's a lot of money, it's not unheard of in terms of the amount. We have a trade deficit in goods, so we import a lot more than we export of goods, but we have a trade surplus in services, okay, but it's smaller. So we wind up with a net trade deficit. We import more than we export goods and services taken together. With China alone, it's about 347 billion in 16, and then it went up in 17, and then it went up again in 18. So if the goal of the tariffs was to get China to stop, or getting people in the US to stop importing a lot more than we were exporting to China, it didn't work yet. In fact, going the other way. So China, the trade deficit with China continues to climb, as you see there. Now this, I know some of these numbers are a little small, so I will translate. How much money are we talking about with these tariffs? Because you're always hearing in the news, Trump is threatening this, Trump has implemented this. How much? When you look at tariffs that were implemented throughout 2018, okay, and this is not just with China, this is with the whole world. And so we put some tariffs on Mexico, I think, on Canada, on other parts of the world. The cost per household was $282. Okay, so in theory, we all paid $282 more on average because of those tariffs. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but a tariff is paid by you and me, it is not paid by China. Let's just keep that. I'll explain why in a bit, but that's what it is. Okay. Contrary to how many times Trump says something else, it's us. There's something called a deadweight loss, which I'm going to explain later. It's complicated. So the total cost to consumers is $414. So that was in 2018. Now, just for scale, the amount of the Trump tax cuts for the average middle-class family, the median family, was about $900. So the tariffs offset half of that for scale, to give you a sense of the size. Now, if these other tariffs go in, this additional 15% tariff on $200 billion goes in, and now this incremental part here at the bottom is just the China piece that we're adding. So we had everything plus this new China piece. That takes it up to $830. So that would almost entirely offset the benefit of the tax cut, okay? That's how much money. I would be shocked if that actually happens, but this is a study that was published by, this was a good one, Federal Reserve, I'm just trying to think which Fed bank, Federal Reserve Bank in New York, so you're not gonna get much more credible analysis than that. Very significant amount of money that we're gonna be paying because of tariffs. All that multiples more expensive Walmart goods. Yes, sir.
Something the media also hasn't been pointing out is what is the tariff collected on? Is it the wholesale cost, the retail cost, the wholesale cost plus shipping, the retail cost plus shipping? Some estimated value like our houses are appraised.
Right. Yeah, I'm not a tariff guru. I will say this. Let's look at this for a second. When a Chinese manufacturer ships the goods here to the U.S., there's an import company that brings those in. They pay the government. Now, if that import company is a Chinese company, which it sometimes is, okay, then the Chinese company is paying the federal government, and you can make the argument that somebody in China is paying that, at least initially, but what are they going to do? That import company, when they bring the goods over and they sell it to a retailer, and it may go through a couple intermediate places, eventually charges the consumer more. So what eventually, the way it works is the U.S. consumer basically pays a higher price, which gets to that import company, which gets to the government. So instead of paying the tax consumer to government like we pay our income tax, it goes through the import company and where is it? So you guys follow that? Okay.
With markup?
With markup.
With the import company?
That's a good question. I don't know if they mark up the tariff price itself or if they just mark it up for the tariff. I don't know. So either way though, whatever that tariff amount is, we're paying it one way or the other. Okay. And there's a study at the bottom that talks about how much more we paid for Washington. Interestingly, when they put a tariff on washing machines, the price of dryers also went up. Because you tend to buy them together for new houses at least. So the prices went up. So Krugman talks about it here. He says the tariff is a tax. Instead of paying it from the consumer right to the government, you're paying it from the import. You're essentially paying the import company, whether it's a U.S. company or a Chinese company, which is remitting it to the federal government. Yes.
All of the retail magazines that I get still, they're all talking about this rush of all the big retailers, Target, Walmart, etc., to South Vietnam,
Right.
or Vietnam now, Indonesia, because they can't guess anymore. They've got to source goods, they know what the cost is going to be.
Right.
And they're not even really trying anymore. They're just trying to get new sources
Right.
to get that product in there.
That's right.
But it's such a massive amount of manufacturing that goes on in, for all the goods, whether it's soft goods or hard goods. There's just not that enough.
Well, and here's the other thing too. Even if you're buying, let's say for a minute, the reason, let's assume the businesses are rational. They're buying in China because it's the cheapest possible source, right? That's what they're doing. Now, South Vietnam, the reason they weren't buying it from South Vietnam is because South Vietnam was more expensive, right? That's right. I mean, why else would, if you're a businessman, you're buying in China because it's cheaper? Otherwise, they would already have been buying in South Vietnam. The point, now here's where I'm headed. What that means is that if you were buying the goods for $100, let's say, in China, they're going to be $110 in South Vietnam. So, in other words, the U.S. consumer is still going to pay more. It's just the money eventually, it's not going to China, it's going to go to South Vietnam. But you're paying more for that. Now, it may take years and years before South Vietnam is as efficient as China to do that. So, in other words, the corporation is trying to go somewhere else with China, but it's going to pay more for the stuff, and then it's going to pass that cost to us. So it doesn't help the consumer. In fact, it still hurts us that the U.S. corporations are going from, instead of China, they're going somewhere else because they've got to go somewhere else then it's more expensive, right? Questions? Yes.
But I had heard somewhere that with the Chinese, using their $100 example, where the Chinese manufacturer, they reduced their price to $96.
If they reduce their price to offset the tariff increase,
partially.
right, then they're trying to compete. They want to stay. They want to keep the business. And that's definitely. We would think that would happen. We'll see.
Yeah, they could absorb some of it, but 25%.
It's a lot. Hard to recover that, right? The workers aren't going to appreciate it. Their salaries cut even more. I'm sure they'll have to put up more nets at Foxconn, right? You heard about that?
Yeah.
The workers were jumping off the roofs, so instead of keep paying them more and treating them better, they put out nets so they couldn't jump off the roofs anymore. I love that story. It's capitalism at its best.
So they can make stuff for Apple.
Right.
One thought that occurs to me on this, and that is that
What effect does, I'm sorry, go ahead.
as the tertiary producers come online, Vietnam, whatever, Africa, where the Chinese actually are influencing what these people are going to probably go along. That provides long-term competition to China. So, in a bizarre way, it might prevent what a lot of us fear, and that is that China monopolizes the production environment and becomes the sole producer and then jacks up the prices. So, in a really obtuse way, there may be an upside to this.
I don't know how fast or what that effect would be, but yes, that's logical. Makes sense. If the rest of these other countries in Asia become more competitive and keep China from becoming a monopoly more or less, then yes, that'd be helpful.
And the reality is, for the last X number of years, as labor costs went up in China over the last 10 years, places like Vietnam and Indonesia and South Korea and various other countries were actually, available as lower cost producers. You just can't move to manufacturing. And so there was already a movement to these countries that's been accelerated by the tariffs. But obviously, when South Korea and Vietnam as a country.
So
Well, I hope these guys have considered a lot of these variables in their analysis and have factored that in to come up with this $800 number, but we shall see.
So
Yes.
one of the points I'm trying to make is there is no relationship between what the Chinese manufacturer sells to us and what they pay their worker. It's a closed economy. Okay, you want monetary theory? Look at China.
So you're saying if whether we pay China more or less, or we put tariffs on them, their workers have no bargaining power to get better wages?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's all about skill and how much demand they have. But dollars? No.
Paul?
It's, at the risk of being overly blunt, it seems to me that both sides on the debate of who's going to pay are way oversimplifying the situation. If it's something like rare earths, China is the only place in the world right now, I think, that has rare earth mines going on. Part of it has to do with it typically being found with thorium, which is a radioactive material, and groups like the APA not wanting people in the U.S. to mine it. But all of that aside, if we have a tariff on rare earths and Americans want to buy it, China can very easily, the Chinese companies or whoever they are, can very easily pass that cost on to Americans.
Makes sense?
On the other hand, if it's something like iron ore, and I have no idea if China exports iron ore, or rice, well, gee, they're American rice farmers. So their ability to raise the price that they sell when it's a commodity good is zero. So they can't, just say, oh, we're going to pass this on. They have to eat the increased stuff.
If there's a tariff on rice, somebody's paying still. Somebody's going to pay because it's going to go through here.
No,
So
what's going to happen is if the price goes up to the consumer, they're not going to buy Chinese rice. They're going to buy California rice.
But what you just admitted, though, is that American rice is more expensive than Chinese rice.
Maybe it was before the
It
tariff.
still would be.
Why?
It wouldn't just suddenly drop.
Right.
Because the supply.
There's a market price for rice in the United States.
Right, which is higher than China, assuming we're importing from China.
It's
There's a
higher than the
reason, right?
Chinese market price for rice, but there's a U.S. market price for rice. And if China is selling us rice, since it's a commodity and you can't tell the difference between Chinese rice and California rice, it eats and tastes the same. I know that there is sticky rice and non-sticky rice, but both areas produce the same kind.
I'm not sure that's the case.
If rice is a bad example, iron ore might be a good
Okay,
example.
all right, I'm just trying to work through either example, because if the tariffs are placed on the goods,
They're placed on goods imported from China. They're not placed on goods imported from necessarily other places or produced domestically.
True.
So if there is a market for this commodity, it seems to me that if
okay, I'm not sure that, maybe if there's a commodity, and I'm trying to think of oil as an example.
oil would be another good example.
But I'm thinking in terms of China, the reason we're importing from China is because the goods are cheaper. That's the theory.
Yeah.
If we are no longer going to import from them because the tariff went up, that means that someone is now sourcing from a more expensive American producer, and that cost is going to come and hit us as consumers. We're going to pay for it. Because instead of getting the cheap Chinese rice, we're now getting more expensive domestic rice. Now you're saying a commodity that says the same price around the world? I guess oil is the only one I can think of, and
I'll bet grains are close to that. I mean, there's probably a difference in the price in the United States versus, and there is for oil too, because otherwise it wouldn't pay for us to ship fuels overseas.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think, if we were importing oil, let's say from Saudi Arabia, and somebody came in and said, we're going to put a tariff on Saudi Arabian oil. All right, let's pretend we could do that, they can't just flow it some other way. Let's think through that. Maybe you guys can help me here, you guys think about this example. If we tariff Saudi Arabian oil and we were importing a lot of it, we have to get that oil from somewhere else. And the reason we were importing it from Saudi Arabia in theory was, I don't know. I mean, it's the only place we could get it, maybe because there's a limit. Maybe we want as much as they can give us. Because now if Saudi Arabia becomes more expensive, we're trying to get more out of Iran or somewhere else. Can't get from Iran. What's a great
We're
place?
importing it from
Venezuela.
Venezuela, trying to get from Venezuela.
We're importing it from Saudi Arabia because they're willing to sell at the going price that the market
I'm not
pays
trying to
for.
analyze a commodity like that's interesting.
But Venezuela was selling it to Germany, and so now Germany will start buying it from Saudi
Yeah,
Arabia.
we were talking about they've been pretty good at getting around these sanctions.
But even so, you're not gonna see the 25% increase unless you're somehow impacting the, how do you wanna say it? You've got the supply curves of whether it's elastic or inelastic.
But think about this too, I mean, if it's something that has a significant labor component, and the reason we're getting it from China is because labor is a lot cheaper there. Same thing with cars from Mexico, however you look at it. If those tariffs now hit that country, we're gonna be forced to pay more.
Yeah.
Now, if it's truly something that is made entirely by machines or something you get out of the ground, there's not much of a labor component, then I'm not sure how to think about
In
it.
any case, my point is that just because we put a 25% of whether it's wholesale or retail or whatever it is,
Right.
tariff on a particular country's goods, does not mean that every commodity that they had previously provided us has gone up by 25%.
That's true. Right. And corporations can take some of that, they can take it as a hit to profit, or it comes to us as either a consumer or producer is gonna get hit by it.
Yeah.
One way or the other, right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The IGM Economist Expert Panel, this is coordinated out of the University of Chicago. They polled 40 or so economists that are from all over the world, but mostly at US universities. None of them, all of them think that tariffs are gonna hit American households. There's nobody, there's no opinion, strongly disagree, nobody disagrees. 0, 0, and 5, no opinion. And then when they talk about certainty, when you go over there at the second graph and they talk about certainty, they're pretty certain. So, in other words, these tariffs are gonna hit us as consumers. The economists are unanimous in believing that. So, if you weren't sure that, that this is the case, this is what the economists are telling us. These are some of the world's leading economists here. This is a survey of, and this is a site I haven't seen, Paul Krugman pointed to it, and if you don't get Paul Krugman's newsletter, you should. It's easy to sign up, it's like and he emails you something like once a week that has a link of articles and other ones he thinks are interesting. But he brought up this place called pollingreport.com, which is a place that brings in all the tons and tons of polls on any subject. So you can click on it, and it'll tell you, I picked this one, but almost all the other ones are the same. They have the same message, all right? And the question is, in the short term, do you think the United States' decision to raise tariffs on Chinese imports will make the economy better, make the economy worse, or will it not have much effect? 24% think it'll make the economy better, 47% think it'll be worse, and 22% think not much effect. So many more people think the economy is going to be worse because of those tariffs. And down here it says, some have said the U.S. and China are involved in a trade war. Who do you think will win a trade war in the long run? It says U.S. 27%, China 24%, both countries 12%, neither country 33%. That's the main answer, is nobody's going to win a trade war. So if you look at China 24% and then neither country 33%, it's either a loss or a tie. So then this is fairly common. When I looked at the other polls, I could have picked any one of them. They were all pretty much the same idea. Okay, now.
You know what's
Oh, sorry,
interesting
go ahead.
about that is that when you talk to a lot of people and you bring up tariff, they're absolutely blank. Yeah, I mean, so I'm amazed that 47% say it would have been worse.
They have an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. whether they understand or not.
70% said they have no idea.
Trade is.
You could have asked them about quantum mechanics and probably got some answers.
That's right. It feels like quantum mechanics. This is our quantum mechanics chart. All right. Now, this one's painful, and because we got a little time, so I'm going to explain this to you. What this means, before I go into all this, what this means is that the bottom line is tariffs hurt consumers more than producers are helped. Tariffs hurt consumers more than domestic producers are helped. Okay, now why is that? All right, now I'm going to do my best to not confuse you, but the odds of that are small, okay? There's some good text over there on the side, so if I am blowing your mind with what I'm saying, that's okay. So, Are you ready?
Demand
This is
versus
like,
supply
this is
and
like
elasticity.
being in your macroeconomics class. This is the slide. I took this from Paul Krugman's textbook, which I have, all right? And I drew this myself, put it on Wikipedia. All right. This is actually one of two slides that are really helpful, but we're gonna wing it. We're here originally. That's our equilibrium point. These are supply and demand curves, okay? Everybody took classes. All right.
What's confusing here is the domestic supply curve isn't hitting the demand curve at pointing to, which is typical Econ 101.
Fetch that. All right, yes. So here's where we are now. So the price is here, the world price, and this is where everybody is. So there's this thing called consumer surplus, which think of it as whether it's financial or otherwise, this is how much benefit as a consumer you get. That is this whole triangle coming all the way down here to, it's E2 to PW to that right there. Yeah, think of it this way, is if all these people that are buying this stuff, they're paying this price, PW, but they were willing to pay this price. So think of it as, if you're gonna pay, let's say your favorite author comes out with a new book, you're willing to pay $100 to read that right now, okay? Let's say. That means you're up here. But most people aren't gonna do that. Or, another way to think about it is, when you buy the first book, you'll pay $100, but you're not gonna pay that much for the second, or the third, or the fourth. So this is where the economy is initially, and this whole triangle coming all the way down here is consumer surplus, and it's defined over there, it's the area under the demand curve but above the price, this whole triangle. Got me? Yep. That big triangle, that's happy consumers, this is their surplus. They would have paid more than this price for some of this stuff.
The money left on the table?
Yeah, money left on the table, in theory, yes. If a producer could read your mind and then said, they know you well
For
enough
you
to know-
and you only.
For you, if they could micro price to every individual and say, Dave's a criminal.
Amazon actually tried to do that.
Okay, if you, in theory, you could, yes, the producer would be able to get a lot more of this to take it away, but right now, since everybody must be, the prices, everyone's paying the same price for that Amazon product, it's E2. Okay, so that's consumer surplus. The other idea that matters here is called producer surplus. That is the area under the price, but above the supply curve. Here. All right? Is that right? Yes. Okay. Now, that's where we are. Now, the way this graph is designed is there is not much producer surplus right here. At this price, producers are just getting barely a little bit of
For
profit.
domestic.
Domestic, in the domestic economy, right? This is domestic demand, domestic supply. All right. At this price, E2, domestic producers are only willing to make this much. That's their supply curve. They're only willing to supply that much at that price. If the price were up here, they supply that much, right? You're a producer, you're only going to produce this much. And so, however, at this price, demand for the product is all the way out here. So this difference between Q1 and C1, those are imports. Does that make sense? So the producer's saying, I'm a US producer, I'm saying for this low price, I'm only gonna do this. But if you were to raise the price, I would produce more. But the demand, people want a lot more at that price, they're willing to import it from overseas.
And that implies it's available.
It's available overseas, right? This is an open market, right? So producers are saying, if the world price, PW, is low, right? US producers aren't doing so well, they're just getting a little bit of surplus here, they're just getting by. But consumers are loving it because they're getting this huge area of surplus above this big triangle, right? This whole triangle all the way out here. And they're getting the goods, this C1, this difference here, all that extra quantity is being produced overseas. That's where we start out. Okay? Now, here's what happens. Trump comes in and says, we're gonna create tariffs. We're gonna raise the price. This is the price of the tariff now, okay, with the tariff. So that's the original price, and this difference is just how much the tariff increased the price of this good. This is one good, like TVs, for example, all right, or the Chinese televisions, or the TV market, or the TV market. Okay, now what happens? This triangle, now we're gonna move from here to here, because the price is now higher. People aren't gonna produce or demand as many, but suppliers are not, domestic suppliers are saying, oh, I can get a higher price, I'm gonna produce over here. Right, where the price hits their supply curve.
Yeah.
All right, that's how we make America great again, right?
That's right. Now, here's the bad news. What happened? If you're a consumer, you just lost this, all these colors, area A, B, C, and D, you just lost, because now your triangle is only from here to there, right? You lost all this. Consumer surplus, gone, wiped out. Who got it? Where did the surplus go? Well, the producer, now remember I said producer surplus is under the price above the supply curve. So the producers pick up A, that goes to them, right? That's a US domestic company is not producing here, Q2. They pick up area A. The government gets area C because it's the tariff price, this little gap here. And the new amount of imports, we're not here anymore. The other companies are only willing to give us C2. So what is this right here? This amount here, and how would I explain that?
Yeah.
This is what US producers are not willing to give, but this is what foreigners are willing to give us, right? So this gap here is the quantity that is tariffed. This is the import quantity, this is the import quantity between Q2 and C2. That's important, right? Because the domestic producers aren't gonna produce Q2 now. And at this price, the foreigners are only gonna give us, we're only gonna demand this much, so this is how much is coming in from overseas. This gap right here, this is the amount of goods that gets tariffed, is this quantity here, C2 minus Q2. That's this, which is how much goes to the government, price times quantity. Government gets that in tariffs. Areas B and D are gone, nobody gets it. That's called a deadweight loss. B and D are deadweight, nobody gets it. Government gets C, producer gets A, B and D go away, nobody's got it. So this is very technical. If you got that on the first try, you are rocking. I mean, you're doing well.
So your title is missing one point. It says tariffs raise prices and hurt consumers, but benefit domestic producers.
Correct. Now, you're a domestic producer, you were stuck here before, right?
Which is really what the Republican agenda is, right?
There you go. They are saying, I'm willing to stick it to consumers, I'm gonna take all this away, A, B, C, and D away from consumers, just to give A to the producers. And the bad news is, consumers but this one's going away as a tariff, this is going away as deadweight loss, because US consumers don't get as much stuff. We don't have the stuff. We're not paying for this stuff, we just don't have it. And then here, that's going to the government and we're paying for it. So we pay this, I guess the way to say, what is B and D? What is the deadweight loss? I guess, if a consumer was getting this much stuff before they were getting more stuff at a lower price, now you're getting less stuff at a higher price. All this goes away. A, B, C, D is taken away from the consumer. This goes to the government. This is deadweight loss. This goes to the producer. So yeah, this is a pro-capital, a tariff is a pro-capital thing. Now where it helps labor is if you're in this industry.
Absolutely.
Right? Right? But, and this is what I said before, if you are in this industry, whether you're the producer or the labor, you're getting a benefit, but you're losing all this. Okay,
Well,
as a consumer, you're losing. As a producer, as a worker, you might be gaining this stuff.
But I don't think it's been shown that the labor is not gained.
This is going to investors, right? This goes to the 1%.
Right.
Yeah. This goes to stock buybacks, another profit. Where does the profit of a corporation go? It goes to stock buybacks. And that's what this is. Does that make sense? I mean, how many of you feel like you could explain that if we just switched places right now?
That was great. We just kind of recording and play it.
So hopefully this stuff on the right, so if we read that, it says, tariffs hurt domestic consumers more than domestic producers are helped. A, B, C, D is lost by domestic consumers. A is picked up by domestic producers. That's what that first part. Higher prices and lower quantity. Higher price, lower quantity, reduces consumer surplus. The triangle's getting smaller. Right? That's what that says. Higher prices and higher prices, lower quantity, reduces the consumer surplus, which is this area, this triangle. Instead of being this full triangle, from here to here and up, it's now this smaller triangle from here to here and up. We lost all this area as a consumer. Make sense? And tariffs expand producer surplus. A. Follow that, because instead of A domestic producer, instead of producing here, that's where price hits the supply curve, that's what the supplier's going to do. Now, at a higher price, the higher tariff price, they'll produce a little bit extra. They'll move from here to here, they pick up this area A. So this area underpriced, above the supply curve, they pick up. Government revenue increases by C. The quantity that is imported times the tariff price. And then areas B and D are deadweight losses, surpluses lost by consumers. Nobody gets B and D, it's gone.
So there was a statement made that labor could be better off because production is higher.
For labor in this industry. Right.
And that's, there might be more hours worked to produce more.
There would be.
There's no assurance that that labor isn't at a lower rate. So,
If labor doesn't have power, this could all go to investors. This could all go to investors. Now, here's the other part of it too, is because of these, there's a book called Economics in One Lesson. Have you guys heard of this? It's by a guy who I guess you'd call a libertarian. He wasn't actually an economist, but he writes in really plain language and he explains a lot of this kind of stuff in an easy way to understand it. It's called Economics in One Lesson. His lesson is you can't just look at the first impact of an economic change, you have to look at how it cascades through the system. And so often politicians will just tell you about the first effect, they won't tell you about the second and the third and the fourth. What I'm going to say here is the idea of deadweight loss, if you are a consumer, if you are paying more for televisions, you don't have money to buy clothes with, you don't have money to buy services with, you don't have money to buy cars with. So to the extent that you're paying more money to the television producers, you have less money in your pocket to buy all these other things.
So it hurts others.
And it hurts other industries. So when you are helping these guys, you're saying, yeah, I'm pro-tariff, let's protect our American industry, our American television industry. What you're really saying is, you're taking away purchasing power from American consumers. You're also raising taxes on them, which is a point lost, I suspect, on Republicans, but you're raising their taxes. Remember what Krugman said? Tariff is a tax, same thing. Economically, very similar, yeah?
So am I right in understanding that if the curves become more elastic, the problem gets reduced? If they become less elastic, more inelastic, it gets worse?
They go flat. So if this were flatter and this were flatter.
Yeah.
C
goes away.
Think about that.
C gets reduced.
Yep. If you can visualize that, you're getting a couple steps on me, I'll have to confess. I'm not sure how to think about that.
The difference between P1 and P2.
So,
PT.
if you didn't get this, if you couldn't rattle this off in your sleep, you're with 99.9% of Americans, so don't feel guilty, but I tried my best. This is about the best diagram. This is a really helpful, I think, way to think about it. The other diagram that helps here is when you don't have all these colors. If you just see this, you see it without these in it, meaning you just ignore this and you see the initial triangle as this big area, and then you see the second one, which is a little smaller. There's another chart that I do. But so just remember a couple things. When you have tariffs, you have deadweight losses. You have a tax. Producers get a benefit, but consumers lose all that extra benefit. And other industries that, to the extent that we're paying more money into the tariff industry, we got less money to spend in the non-tariff industries, and they get hurt. So it's when you say pro-labor, it might be pro-labor in the protected industries, doesn't mean it's pro-labor in the unprotected industries. Yeah.
So this is just domestic, but you take a domestic supplier or a supplier like Harley Davidson, and we've all read a lot about them. They're being hit by increases in their steel. The marketplace is collapsing because they're trying to charge higher prices. And their European marketplace is, because of the tariffs going both ways, it's hurt them in 3 or 4 ways. So they may, according to this chart, they may get a larger.
All right, let's look at that. Let's pretend a minute that this is let's say that Harley's selling into Europe, and this is the Europe chart now. Domestic now is Europe,
Okay.
right? You're Harley, and you are. It's going to be hard for me to think through, so I may get backwards. But let's pretend this is Europe now. Harley is, if this is now motorcycles, Harley is, now Harley here, people in Europe are importing Harley Davidsons,
Correct.
right? So Harley, let's say,
Is part of the difference between Q1 and C1.
there you go, thank you. So C1 is the market without tariffs. So Harley is able to produce, they're producing here, they're producing Q2, right?
Now,
No, Q1.
no,
Q1.
they're producing, Harley is part of the difference between Q1 and C1.
Thank you. Right, right. Okay, so we're talking about Europe now. So Harley is
The
exporting,
imports-
yeah, people in Europe are importing Harleys.
So imports in Europe are C1 times Q1.
And it's Q1. Right, okay. All right, that's right. So a European motorcycle company is here producing Q1, and Harley is part of the difference between Q1 and C1. Right. Thank you, Carl. Okay. You guys get that? Does that make sense?
Yep.
You flipped it. So here's European, what is it? What's that motorcycle company in Italy? It's got a Ducati. Ducati motorcycles.
BMW.
They're producing BMW motorcycle. They're producing only Q1 together. Okay, that's the domestic European market is producing Q1. All this extra stuff over here, C1 minus Q1 is imported.
Harley's, Suzuki,
Harley,
whatever.
Suzuki, whoever else. Now you put in the tariffs in Europe, Harley and everybody else, instead of producing at C1, is producing at C2.
Well, they're now producing,
But
everybody in the world,
They lost
selling
this.
C2,
This quantity came down.
but the imports came down by more than the difference between C1 and C2. They also came down.
Europe is now, the European producers are at this price now, they're producing Q2, and the imports have fallen from, boy, C1 minus Q1,
You've got two different.
as the arrows, they've squeezed here.
Yeah.
Yep. So the Harley, instead of being able to fill in this demand all the way out here, is only able to fill into this demand.
Now,
Q2
Q2 to C2.
Is that little one?
Remember, Q2 is now the domestic,
Right, okay, right. Domestic goes to Q2 because they get a better price domestically. Harley's facing a cut, they come back here.
But-
That's
but
tricky, but yes,
Since it's
that's,
retaliatory tariff, Suzuki is not paying. Which.
so they would eat up that, they would get more of the benefit.
It complicates.
they're gonna give them, Harley's gonna suffer most of the.
Worse than that.
Right, and that's, Bill, that's what you said. It's not easy to do, off the cuff, but it's a good test. That is, if you can flip something like this around and still get the right answer, that's pretty good. You quiz yourself. I'll have to wrestle with it too, but
So to make it even harder, just in case
it's too hard. I'm already, my brain
So
is
do you
exploding.
see where the vertical line from Q2 intersects the domestic demand curve? Boom. Let's imagine that was that the government put that kind of a tariff on it.
Right, okay, even bigger. So this E3, we started here, now E3 is,
Clear up there. Now what happens?
well, same idea. I mean, instead, this triangle shrinks even more, meaning these areas pick up even that much more space. So Q, if we're right there,
Now the company gets a lot more
the company
benefit.
gets a lot more.
Well,
They pick up a lot more
what's
space.
gonna happen,
Message.
what's gonna happen is, assuming you follow the line up on the domestic demand, you're gonna run into the domestic supply, and you're gonna wipe out all the imports. So go back to where the two lines intersect.
Oh, right.
Go back to where the two lines intersect, and that's your new supply, that's your new E4, is where the red line intersects the domestic demand line, and you will have zero imports. Because if tariffs are high enough, you'll wipe out the import market,
Okay, right.
and and the whole market will be supplied domestically.
So you're saying it's not possible to put a tariff effectively on goods that high?
Well, you can put huge tariffs on, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna wipe out, the
All the
imports.
imports.
Right.
Yeah.
But you
People will be
wipe them
consuming,
all out.
will be here.
You can wipe out your domestic supplier too.
Really?
It happened with yachts. There was a huge tariff on yachts, and it actually wiped out the domestic yachts.
How did that work?
No one would buy a yacht in America. If you could afford a 20-foot yacht or a 40-foot yacht, you didn't buy it in America. You didn't house it in America either, it was wild.
But if you're an American, and there are American producers,
If you're paying $4 million for a yacht, think you might want another home?
you might.
Let's proceed.
And you've got the
But,
connection.
so this is a good brain stretcher for you. I'll put this in your archive of tariff
I
wisdom.
still don't understand why you're worried about it here.
Minimum wage.
Yours hasn't gone up.
The Congressional Budget Office just did another report on the minimum wage. They do this every few years, and there's always interesting results when they do this.
Probably.
So
Because the.
if you raise the minimum wage, if you raise the minimum wage to under three scenarios, $10, $12, and $15, and then steps by 2025. So this is the scenarios that they drew. All right? They said, well, what would that do? And they have three policies here, 15, 12, and 10. It's the impact in year 2025. And what they said is that workers that are that would be earning below that new minimum wage, 17 million of them would benefit. So they would have earned $13, let's say, in 2025, and now they're going to get 15. There's 17 million of those. The other one is, even though you're above the minimum wage, you still get a boost because everybody else is getting bumped, and so you get a bump too. 10 million plus, so there's 10 million of those. So that's 27 million people that would benefit from the $15 scenario, which you often hear in the news. A lot of progressives are pushing for a $15 federal, and some states have enacted that. This is just federal.
The House will pass that this week.
Pardon me?
What I've been reading is the House will actually pass that.
I had not heard that. Okay. So yeah, the House has got, 100 bills or something they've passed, and they're waiting for the Senate to act on. They'll be sitting there when hopefully the Democratic president and Senate comes in, but let's hope. And let's work hard toward that. Adverse impact on employment, very much disputed among the liberal circles, but CBO says probably 1.3 million with fewer people would be working. Whatever that number would be without the minimum wage hike, whatever the number would be without the minimum wage hike, 1.3 million. Whatever that number would be without the minimum wage hike. I'm gonna get that back.
1.3 million fewer.
Fewer would be working, right. Thank you for finishing that. And they said that although the range varies between 0 and 3.7 million in their model, could be more, could be none. There's been a lot of liberal research lately. Paul Krugman very much believes that it would be more like 0. He's not a big believer that you'd see a lot of unemployment because of a higher minimum wage. And then the net poverty reduction, number of people, 1.3 million people would come out of poverty. And then the same idea for the $12 and the $10. $10 doesn't have much impact. Now, so any questions on that one?
So we put the same number of people out of jobs as we lift out of poverty. Is one way to look at it.
Yeah, you would think it'd be
Assuming they
correlated, right? One would hope that, well, not necessarily, never mind. Yes, that's correct. This is what happens, it's coincidental.
Notice for the $12 policy, they're pretty similar too.
Yeah. I don't understand something like that, and that is in this issue of adverse impact. We're in a labor shortage right now. So we actually have something close to that number of jobs unfilled in some.
A lot more, 7 million. 7 million unfilled jobs right now.
But the difference between is the number of unemployed and the unfilled jobs. Is probably close.
He's saying that they won't be unemployed very long.
They're displaced, I can understand.
You're saying labor has some power, so the employers need the labor. If you raise the minimum wage, they sort of have to pay it. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, I'm saying if somebody loses a job, the people who are accustomed to working are going to go back and start ringing doorbells. Are these people that the CBO thinks are simply not going to be employable at $15 in 2025? And remember, that's only the equivalent of about $8.50 right now.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think we talked earlier about automation, meaning if you raise the prices, companies will tend to automate more, which
What's the equivalent?
Also, they may choose to live with fewer employees. They may just say, I'm only going to live.
So 2% inflation?
I'm not understanding the relationship between the adverse impact on employment and the net poverty reduction number of people.
There's the
Well, no, I mean, yes, but if I look at it for the $15 thing, the one column is suggesting that 1.3 million people thereabouts lose their jobs, okay? And 1.3 million are also lifted out of poverty. Does that mean that those 1.3 million that lost their jobs are also lifted out of poverty, come out of poverty somehow? Why isn't it a zero?
Is in that number, probably, right? Because this lifts a lot of people out of poverty,
Right.
but you lose 1.3 million, so maybe this is 2.6.
I'm wondering if the net poverty reduction, if nobody lost their job, it would have been 2.6, but because 1.3, or something else, I don't know how to,
Yeah, that's probably a good way to interpret it.
is that what you would do?
Yeah. The other thing to remember, and we'll get to this later, is that all of these are before tax and benefit numbers in terms of wages.
Let's look at that. So this is what happens by income group, because this gives you a sense of the inequality effect, but also which groups are benefiting more or less by the different policy options. So let's look at the $15 for a minute. So families that are earning less than the poverty threshold, and I'm using 23,000 as a rough number. That's, the reason is, there are different numbers, like the poverty line for a family of 2, or a family of 3, or a family of 4 is different, so I sort of split the difference between a family of 3 and 4, and that's where I get the 23,000. You got that in parentheses after each one to give you a sense of the range of the poverty threshold. So below poverty, families earning less than 23,000, under the $15 policy option are gonna get, there's about $7.7 billion that's gonna go into that group. I think the percentage is a more meaningful number to use, because who knows how many people are in the group. 5.3% increase in their income. And Carl said, pre-tax. Okay? And then you do the same thing with each of their groups, so 23 to 70,000, 70, okay. What you see is as you work your way down the line, the percent increase falls and becomes negative, meaning those groups that are making lots and lots of money are essentially paying the groups that are making less money. So if you're an owner of, if you are an owner of a business and let's say you're earning more than 6 times the poverty threshold, you're taking a hit.
Yeah.
How do you realize that?
You're paying your workers more, think about your company profits, you own a small plumbing business, you got 10 plumbers working for you, and you're paying them more, and, although I don't think any plumber's making less than minimum wage for the restaurant. You've had one come to your home, but still, I mean.
You're buying stuff from people who are having to pay their employees more too.
Fair enough, yeah, that's good. So it's an inequality reducer, right? You're shifting money from wealthier people to lower income people.
So I've had a number of businesses, when I paid my union workers more based on contract, I raised my prices. And in the businesses that I've had around here, non-union, when the market demands that I pay people more, I raise my prices.
Right.
So where's the loss?
So I buy your services,
Yeah,
and
you
it
go ahead.
costs me more.
I buy somebody else's
I
instead.
don't know how the study handles that scenario. In other words, are these
No,
people
we're talking about a
paying
minimum
more?
wage, which you assume is a national or a statewide effect. Right? That
Well, if
everybody's
you assume
gonna have the
national,
same
you're gonna have a
impact.
different implication than statewide. If it's statewide, I'm gonna buy, and I'm a buyer for a big company, your Walmarts or whoever, now suddenly, maybe I'm buying it not from Illinois, but I'm buying it from Missouri. Somebody's got a plant in Missouri.
So you go out of business, Ken, because you can't compete internationally.
I mean, was that ever in your experience? Did you ever have to compete with people with factories in other states that were cheaper because of the labors and stuff, and it was sort of tighter?
I did.
Yeah.
I
One of the
don't
things
know to what extent CBO is factoring in like higher prices and other things and how far involved they get their model. They're just saying, this is what would happen to the pre-tax income, the before-tax income that these families have. They're not saying that they would pay 2% more. I don't think they're saying that these families would pay 1% more because prices would be higher because of it. I don't know that they went that far.
What happens to gross tax receipts? Does this make it better?
Okay, well, no, we have an answer to that question.
You do?
Yes, we do. But I can't tell you the amount exactly, but all families where it says billions of dollars, they're saying that overall, because you got some more people that are out of work, that overall, the economy is a little bit worse off by these amounts. So
Oh,
that
really?
all families overall, billions of 2018 dollars. The economy's, this is very tiny, by the way, in our economy, right, which is a 21 trillion economy, but $8.7 billion less in the economy in 2025 because we've raised the minimum wage. In other words, it's not a tariff, but it has some dead weight type loss associated with it when you raise the minimum wage like that. So it's really efficient when you can drive labor costs down to nothing. It's tough when you're a worker, but it's very, the economy gets more efficient the lower you push those.
So you're saying tax revenues would go down too?
Yes, that's what that's saying, because
Wow.
families are making less money, because there's like, those 1.3 million are out of work. Right? I mean, that's an example,
Okay.
1.3 million fewer working. So it's actually, the economy is less efficient, but what you've done is you said, I'm willing to trade a less efficient economy, I'm gonna take some deadweight loss, shift money from our wealthier citizens to our poorer ones. This is a way of addressing inequality, right? Now, again, not everyone's gonna agree with this, but the CBO is always our best source.
Let's look at this some more next month. I'm wondering if we've really got this figured out.
Well, Carl has a couple more slides here.
Oh, yeah.
You probably think-
If you look at what the CBO has done previously, when I looked at the raising minimum wage, they basically said that it was a wash in terms of, the fiscal U.S. budget.
Yeah.
That the savings in terms of food stamps and all of that versus the extra cost for the unemployed was going to wash out.
And does it have some kind of a curve like the Lafleur curve where, $15 is the best, but if you go to $40, that's too much? Or $100 minimum wage is,
You would think there would be some kind of diminishing return, right? And I don't know what the right math is, but if you look at 27 million people benefiting here in the $15 scenario versus 1.3 million that lose a job, if you were to do that same computation, is 27 over 1.3, what's 11 divided by 0.3? I don't, you could draw a curve, right? And you could probably figure out exactly that on a curve for this. What is the optimal wage to have? I guess you could.
I was just wondering about the 1.3 million. I was making $12 an hour, okay? And based on the reduction of workforce or various reasons, I got laid off.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't find a job? Is this saying
What they're
1.3
saying
million?
is, okay,
You can't get hired at $12 an hour. So if no employer thinks you're worth more than $12 an hour, and the minimum wage is 15.
you're SOL.
yeah.
And-
So
and-
somebody else got out of poverty, but you just got dropped into it.
And if you read all the details of the report, what they say is that 1.3 million are the toughest people to employ, the teenagers in the inner cities. And so getting them onto the ladder, the economic ladder of jobs and things like that, you're gonna be cutting off those lower rungs of the ladder, and those will probably be the people that get hit the worst.
So is this racist, to be blunt? I mean, does this hurt inner city minorities?
It might,
Yeah.
the other group that is gonna really, club are the, let's call them geographically disadvantaged.
West
Yeah.
Virginia.
People that, people in.
Arkansas.
Arkansas and southern Illinois,
West Virginia.
who, West Virginia, where, they're gonna play hell finding, they get that kind of wage.
I look at the Illinois minimum wage and go, Chicago, the Chicago metro area can handle what Illinois is going up to a 15. But when I look at Decatur and Danville and Cairo and, places like that, I expect to see the unemployment rate going up in those metro areas.
And the only way around that, frankly, is, there's two ways. One of them, either we provide, find work in those areas with a competitive wage, which would basically be a CCC kind of thing, or we convince people to start moving. And one of the things that I've been reading is that mobility, people willing to move, is at an all-time low.
That's true.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, 50 years ago, women were not as big a part of the workforce, and so you had one wage earner in a family. And so it's easier to move than if you've got one person loses a job, the other person still has a job in the first geographic location. It makes it that much tougher.
So we've got a scenario here where this is good if you're a white, middle, or upper class community family, and you want your kids to have a nice paying summer job. No, because they're gonna be able to get $50 an hour at the local McDonald's. But it's not so good if you're a minority who doesn't have good training, graduated from high school, didn't get a high school education, or did barely get one just got passed through.
Or is it a transportation desert like the west side of Chicago?
Yeah.
No, I don't see it that way. I see somebody's making $12 an hour now and trying to, man and wife, and trying to sustain a family, they can't do it.
Well, wait for the next graphs on that one.
And let's look at the question, we'll bring that back, we'll look at the CBO reports more and see how the minority, and all I would say here is that if you've got 27 million people that are benefiting and 1.3 million that are getting put out of work, there's gonna be, I'm not sure that minorities aren't being helped here. So
Some are.
let's look at, yes, for sure. Okay, Carl, do you wanna help here? I can try it if you wanna do co-op too.
Well, this is a CBO report from last year, June of 2018, looking at the effective marginal tax rates and the tax and loss of benefits rates for low and moderate income workers. So if you take a look at the vertical line at 7.25, which is the equivalent of at 2,000 hours, 14,500 a year, the pre-tax earnings is the straight diagonal line that goes from 0 on up to the 450, 450. But the after-tax benefits earnings, when you figure out SNAP benefits, healthcare, Medicaid, and other types of assistance, they're basically earning a little bit below 30,000 equivalent at that 7.25. And with the raise up to $15 an hour, they get a little bit above 30,000, or about a 10% increase in their after-tax and benefits income from more than doubling the minimum wage.
Not much impact.
So they're losing a lot of government benefits when they go up.
So this was a hypothetical single parent with one child. People have looked at a hypothetical single parent with two children actually has this, even negative. So, I mean, we've got a lot of problems with our, benefit structure in terms of creating disincentives to go ahead and earn more money. And so if you think you're helping the single parent household a lot by going from 7.25 to 15, assuming they're qualifying for these government benefits, you're not helping them that much. And so when Paul's talking about the people who don't collect government benefits, that suburban family, with the college kid home for the summer, all of that's, they're on that blue line straight up, pretty much. But for the single parents that qualify for a lot of government benefits, the actual increase in their after-tax and benefit income is not very much.
It's really good insight.
Initially, but then it goes up.
You're saying it goes up when?
Well, if you look at bottom line, it goes up to almost 350.
Yeah, but that's after $15.
Yeah, that's at a wage of what, $37.50 an hour?
Yeah, and it never gets to the
Oh, is
slope.
that what this?
Yeah.
It gets to the slope of the uncompensated.
So good job, everybody. I came in as a Democrat and leaving as a Republican.
Very good.
Well, no.
There's
Here's the thing. This is why a lot of economists argue that the best way to help that family is not by raising the minimum wage. It's by increasing the earned income tax credit, by increasing SNAP benefits, by increasing some of those other benefits and creating better incentives for the people to go ahead and work more and earn more money.
Yeah.
So you don't have people turning down, raises, and promotions and raises, because that would push them over a benefit cliff.
Yeah.
And so they lose Medicaid benefits for themselves and their child. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done that way. I mean, if you look at that graph, all those places where the line jogs down.
You don't want those. We do not want those.
So we should be getting rid of those, and increase the earned income tax credit will increase the after-tax income of people as they make more.
And
So
those earned income tax credits shouldn't be child dependent or anything like that. Maybe child inclusive, but now they're child dependent.
well, the amount of the earned income tax credit when you don't have children is way too low.
Wouldn't the,
I mean, that,
wouldn't this,
how you deal with the children is a different question. But clearly, it's too low right now.
And the ceiling is way too low also.
it seems like it's counterintuitive that if you earn more dollars per hour, you would make less.
It's not.
Because it's a fixed, because there's a fixed benefit down there. So you almost have to make that increase in minimum wage with a corresponding, as Carl was saying, raise into the benefits area.
You can't penalize, we need to find a way to make this curve.
Always going up, right?
It's gotta- The slope is too flat, we gotta raise it.
And did I hear Carl correctly that the two child single parent is in a far worse situation than this?
Okay, with the caveat, the only organization I've seen do one is the Illinois Policy Institute, which
Yeah.
has,
I know you don't particularly love them.
they have done some questionable analyses. However, the type of analysis they did is kind of consistent with this. If this is showing basically flat, and you have a second child, it's going to be even flatter or potentially negative. And you've got places where it drops off where you no longer qualify for Medicaid, you no longer qualify for, we've got benefit cliffs built into the current system.
Okay. I think this is just a great chart, there's a ton of insight in here.
Wow, this is worthy of discussion for longer, but anyway.
And I guess, Carl, keep going.
Well, this is from that same analysis saying, again, from $7.25 to $15 an hour, the marginal tax rate over the different portions is over 50% for almost the entire period. So,
Wow.
So
the government takes more than half of every additional dollar that they make.
for the basically in terms of taxes and lower benefits, yeah. And so it is a blunt, raising the minimum wage is a blunt instrument to increase the, economics for that single parent, family, that doesn't do it very efficiently.
Is it how you?
This is redistribution of wealth.
Not very effectively.
How do you
Let's listen to my hypothesis here. So if I'm a company, I'm now not paying $7.25 an hour for a worker that I need, I'm paying $15.
Right.
So I'm paying more money out as a company.
Right.
But the government is paying less because they're not paying these benefits.
That's right.
So our taxes then should be less.
It's a first order.
All of our
It's
taxes.
a first order approximation. It looks like you as a company have taken over part of the government's benefit payments. And so it looks like your quote unquote payments to the government on behalf of the government have gone up. But you're going to recoup part of that on the backside because your profit is going to be less.
Well, you've heard this
Well,
discussion about Walmart,
you're not
right?
gonna recoup.
No, it's a double whammy.
No, it's not.
here's the deal. So you have a bunch of employees that you were paying $7.50, $7.25, I guess is the number an hour, and now you're gonna pay them $15 an hour, and let's assume that they're all productive enough that you're gonna keep them, okay? Well, they didn't get to keep that extra money. But a chunk of that extra money goes to the government because.
They didn't get to keep any of it, you're right, from this chart.
Well, not quite any of it. You don't get to keep a whole lot of it. So effectively, what you've done is instead of the government giving them money that came from taxes, you are giving them more money, okay?
But it's profit.
You're shifting the burden onto the private
You're
sector.
shifting the burden onto you, and now that reduces at the end of the year, that reduces your total net profit, right? Because you paid more for your labor. So presumably you will pay somewhat less in taxes, but probably not a 1-for-1. You know what I'm saying?
But look the amount I paid in
Oh, yeah.
benefits.
Yes,
and
agreed,
unemployment tax
exactly.
and,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, boom, 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 that,
You know, you paid $1 million more
I
in,
think you guys are not looking at this as holistically as you might. That is that if it were possible, that you make this wage increase and then combine it with adjustment of earned credit and with the SNAP payments, if it were more of a holistic, other pieces, this could work. The problem is that we only seem to have the political will to do the
yes,
most visible and simplest thing.
because it gets more votes, to be blunt.
Well,
I'm not sure people would understand if we did the other.
I'm sure they wouldn't understand.
But the concern is, the other is ultimately more important.
But used in combination with it.
Using combination, it might be even better.
That's.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's what I'm going.
At least from what I'm understanding.
Right, that's from what I'm.
Yeah.
Last thing, and we're almost done here. This is a chart that shows the last 4 years that are fully completed and the statistics, some of the major statistics. The green or the red shows you whether that variable got better or worse, green being better and red being worse. And you can see there are quite a few variables that have gotten worse from 2017 to 2018. We've shown you comparisons earlier to kind of show you that first 2 years of Trump versus the last 2 years of Obama. So you've got some of that other analysis in here, but if you look at 2018, GDP growth in 2018 was the same as 2015. Job creation is getting back to what it looked like in 2015, but Obama just barely edges out Trump when you look at all 4 years. Unemployment rate's been improving the whole time. Inflation's higher. Real wage growth is slower. It's better than it was in 17, but you can see 2.2, 1.3, and then 0.4, 0.6. You know, it improved from 17 to 18, which is why it's green, but it's still lower than under Obama. Mortgage rates are higher. Stock market had a great year in 2017, but a bad year in 2018. Budget deficit's been continuing to grow relative to the size of the economy. Number of uninsured is up a couple million since 2016, 1.9 million, and the trade deficit has continued to grow as a percentage of GDP. So it's a mixed record. It's not at all, all is not perfect in the economy. What I mean by take action is cut this slide and share it on your Facebook or share it wherever your social media is to get the word out that, yeah, the economy's doing pretty well, but it's not all green. Okay, there's a lot of things that are worse. And there's some text commentary here if you need any ideas. It sort of talks to these points. So you've got 2 pages of text that go through kind of all these things and how you can describe it, better understand it, but also how you can describe it to your friends. This is one of my favorites. When Carl we talk about the big 3 variables: job creation, the budget deficit, and healthcare. Healthcare's coverage is worse. Budget deficit is way worse, up 40% on average over 10 years. And then the
growth is a little lower.
Yeah, right. So, I'm definitely a mixed record, but all those statistics are here for you. So what I would say is grab this stuff, share it, and you've got any kind of bullets here you can grab and pull them. Between this group here, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people that'll see these things and have them. So, yeah.
A little bit of a rub with this, if you go back to that slide, I would suggest if we compared the last 2 Democratic presidential terms and all of these numbers, I think that would be Clinton and Obama, we would find more variation in these numbers between those two than we would between Obama and Trump. Is that a fair statement, do you think? Or at least it might be. So I'm not sure that there's a wonderful story or a bad story here. I mean, you know, it's.
Well, if you want real GDP growth, for the last few presidents, Obama's 2.1%, Bush 43 is 1.7%, Clinton's 3.7%, Bush 41 is 2%, Reagan is 3.4%, Carter's 3.4%. If you look at private sector job growth, Obama does very well, and even discounting the fact that we lost a whole bunch of jobs in his first year from the recession he inherited. Private sector job growth under Bush is negative for 8 years. So if you want to talk about a huge discrepancy between Democrats and Republicans, that's really where you see it.
I mean, the second term of.
Right, but you're saying, but there's more of a difference between two Democrats than there is between the last two Democrats than there is between Obama and Trump here, right?
I'm
Not sure. I'm not either.
Our GDP you see, but on other stuff you don't.
Clinton's job growth was
Phenomenal. Yeah, we can look at that. We'll take a look at it. We'll answer that question. It's an interesting question. All right.
And the other
I was
thing-
just gonna make a comment. If you were to do the first 6 months of 2019, you'd see some very interesting trend lines. I mean, the job creations per month is down.
Yeah.
I think significantly, right, Carl?
It's at about 175.
Yeah, 175.
Yeah.
The unemployment rate is down by a couple percentage points.
Yeah.
The inflation rate, I think, is staying just about the same.
Yeah. A little less. Yeah.
I'm not sure about median household
Yeah, we don't
income.
have that yet. It's probably going to be a good number for 18.
Yeah. Wage growth, I think, is staying consistent.
Just picking up.
Mortgage rate, let's see, what's it? Stock market. So, I mean, if there is another addition to it, I'd love to see the trend line.
So sort of annualize kind of where we are in 19.
Yeah.
Okay.
First half of 2018, yeah.
Yeah, how the first half did. Yeah. Okay.
The two things, obviously, we've got the fiscal year ending September 30th. We'll need appropriations bills before then or a continuing resolution. And before then, we've got that we're going to run into the debt ceiling. And so, I mean, from my standpoint, I hope that Democrats and Republicans pass a clean debt ceiling increase or just eliminate the damn thing. And take it away as a negotiating ploy, threatening to shut down the government.
I'm going to see it. I'd be curious how Trump uses it. He's going to try to ship some congressmen back to their countries, their home countries, or what. So we'll see what that is. But thank you guys again for your attention.
Is it Taco Tuesday?
It's Monday, Bill. So I don't know what the deal is, Eddie's on Mondays, but I'm sure they've got one. And if it's not Taco Tuesday,